Hello out there, traders. It's February 1st, 2024, and welcome to the Apteros Daily Market Insight for the ES. Let's go through and take a look at the exciting day we had going on yesterday. So, in our original prep, we were looking at this area here, and we were defining it as the main line in the sand zone. We're looking bullish up above, heading into these neutral areas for targeting, and bearish down below to get to this first target, and then, of course, traversing down into that overall bullish area down below here. Now, what ended up playing out for us in the session is that as we kind of got into the open around this area, we got a pretty strong drive to the downside with no real opportunities to get long off of any kind of turns or inflections or anything like that, right? So we ended up getting below our bullish line in the sand, and it just kind of held down below here. And once we kind of got into this area here, it was all about scenario two. So we were monitoring scenario two, and a lot of these kind of little inflections here to get short, they made sense, but they never really went anywhere, kind of heading into that FOMC, waiting around for that number and so forth, and getting into those announcements later in the day. The best opportunity, the one that made the most sense, that was closest to our overall line in the sand after the breakdown into scenario two, was that particular swing there. If you didn't get that, there's nothing wrong with that, right? After we got into this move down, it was clear that we were 100% in scenario two. So the acceptance picture was undeniable and unquestionable at that point. And we got a perfect short right here around the FOMC announcements, and there was really nothing else to it. It was a straight down move into our overall bullish zone, and that really was the main trade there, along with scenario two. From there, we tried to stabilize around our bullish zone, but ended up breaking a little bit lower. Now we're kind of back up into it, but we do have some changing conditions that we'll talk about and monitor for today. Okay, so now taking a look at the landscape for today. Very interesting across the board, but essentially we have one line in the sand for the session here. We have a scenario one being that we stay bearish below that, scenario two that we go bullish up above that. If we head into scenario one and maintain this kind of area here, we have to pay attention to this zone overall. It's a place we had some value established before, and the key here is that it might get a little choppy inside of this area, but if we get out below it, a lot of open space to the downside, and that's whenever we would start looking for new lows and things like that. In other words, kind of more of a trending type of environment, and that's what we would be kind of expecting if we ended up clearing out these lows and holding below between this value area that I've been mentioning here. So that's the overall landscape what we're looking at with scenario one. Now that open land or that open area, once we get down below those lows, there is another area that we can test down in the 4820s, kind of down to that zone. So if it does end up trending, pretty well to the downside today, the 4820s would be kind of that overall big time trend, type of target. Other than that, the best way to handle what's going on right now is, staying short along with the bias here because that's where the acceptance picture is, and then using these neutral references as kind of targeting zones. And then, of course, you can watch these lows. If we end up clearing them out pretty handedly, simple hold, into some open space here, and then you can trend follow from there. If we don't clear them out, you can kind of use this area for scaling and so forth as the market develops for the session. So that's the general idea of what we're looking at with scenario one. Now, if we break into scenario two, in other words, we see a clear move to the upside, hold, and continuation, we'll be monitoring these neutral areas as the main targets for that upside type of move on scenario two. Now, the first neutral area, not as critical as a target, to be honest. It would be essentially more or less a place to monitor for a healthy, strong scenario two. So what we could end up seeing is something like this happen, right? It's possible. The reality is this line in the sand exists between a couple of areas of value. So that is something that you have to be aware of whenever you're looking at the overall landscape in today's context. It's definitely a possibility that we end up coming up into here and then moving down into here, and then we could see something like this develop for the session. That's just a note on what can happen between these two areas. But for right now, this line in the sand is bearish in nature, and we're monitoring that move into there. And if it does break up above, this neutral reference would be important for us to get up into, and then we would definitely be looking for that upper neutral target area, and that would be our main spot to look for with the upper move out of scenario two. And of course, if things get a little impressive to the upside, there is another target up above here for a neutral reference, heading up into that 49, 48 area. Okay. So that is the overall landscape for today's DMI. As usual, Let's mind our risk, mind our process, and let's have a great trading day out there. Hopefully, this was helpful, and good luck.